Jay.
Yes, people complain about negative advertising, but you see more and more and more of it. It kind of seems like people are getting what they don't want, but it must work. Why do we see so much
It
of
works. It works. It works in two ways. One way, negative campaigning creates something called the anchor effect. It draws that candidate down sort of to the bottom of the ocean. And if one candidate is using it, the other one cannot take the high road. Just cannot do it. It won't work. The other, and once again, this comes from some great new brain research studies at UCLA, looking at how do these ads work and what do they do. They actually create a feeling of apathy. In other words, if I'm for a candidate and I see a lot of negative ads about that candidate, I might not change my mind, and I probably won't, but I'm likely to stay home. And so it's defensive. It's a defensive method, but they do work. They are effective. And so candidates, unfortunately, need to use them.
As a Democrat, I would hope that in the primaries, maybe they would be used less often, and then in the general elections, if you have to, go for it.
I would hope so, too. I would hope so, too.
I think people are just going to rebel eventually and just not watch political ads anymore. I don't know what we can do to change that, because it's horrible, and I hate to see it, and it's getting worse and worse every election. Chris?
Yeah, you talked a little earlier about fear and kind of how that affects people. This election, there was a lot of fear about voting fraud, problems with voting machines. How do you think it affected voters in the election, and how do you think it affected the media coverage of the election?
I'm really not sure about that. I believe there was a section of the population that was very concerned about this election and whether we really would be maintaining democracy as we have always known it. Certainly, if people believe that their vote is not going to count, that will inhibit going to the polls and going through the effort to vote. I think this was a critical election, and that a lot of people were really waiting to see how it would come out and whether we would have those voting traumas again.
Okay, so you didn't think it made people more vigilant or anything like that? You just think that people were kind of sitting back and waiting to see how this one would go?
I'm not sure, but I think for that question, I think it would be great for someone to go out and find out.
Okay.
And I think that some research would need to be done, and that would help answer that question. But I don't think I would have any better answer than sort of just a gut feeling on it.
Okay, thank you.
Sandy?
How should we respond to such pathetic statements as, well, there's no difference between Republicans and Democrats. They're all the same. They're all crooks. And that's not true. And we know that a lot of people are really dedicated public servants. How do we respond? What should we say to someone like that?
I think to anyone who says that, we certainly want to talk about the accomplishments of the Democratic Party. And of course that means the Democratic Party needs to have a very powerful, strong message so that you can demonstrate quite clearly the differences. There are a lot of differences, and they're there. And as long as we make the message very clear and we educate about what we're for and why we are so committed, I think we can help people understand the difference.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anybody else?
Yeah, we've talked about different kinds of advertising, and the one that really gets my blood boiling are the ones that are just out and out, false, deceptive types of ads. What can be done, if anything, in terms of cleaning up the act out there, in terms of those blatant lies that get put out into the media?
I don't think anything will ever clean up that act. I would once again go back to Clinton. He used to monitor them all day long. As soon as he identified one of those ads, he would have someone on his team develop a counter ad. And you've got to get a counter ad out, because if something comes out, it's not true. It still gets into the voter's mind. It's there. It's that anchor. That's why they're used, because they do pull. And they don't leave memory. They stay there. And the more emotionally insightful they are, of course, then the more they're going to remain. So you have to get a counter message out right away. And Clinton would get it out in the next 12 hours. He was very, very careful to make sure he didn't allow any of those deceptive ads to stand.
So no holding back when it's time to anti-SWIFT vote. You just got to go for it.
You have to go right away.
Got to do it
right away, immediately. You have to get the counter message. You have to get that into memory. as soon as possible.
Right.
I think that's what happened with Kerry. Was he didn't, you know,
Too slow.
he said nothing. For,
Yeah.
Right, and if
And
you
then
do
it's too
that,
late.
then right,
It's
and then
too
it's too late because people have moved on. You know, they moved on to something else. They're not paying attention anymore, and you've lost your opportunity.
But there was a theory that if you respond to it, you're dignifying it.
No, I wouldn't worry about that.
No.
The issue in terms of memory and the way people store information is that you've got, if there's an anchor to the left, you have to provide an anchor to the right, and they have to both be there in real time, as close as possible.
I'll remember that one.
Okay.
I think we all would want to take the moral high ground, but the truth is the negative stuff works. And you know, you have to address that.
Well, you know, psychologists have studied something called a zero-sum game, where they give people a chance to play a game, and you get to be on the high ground and be cooperative, okay? But if you're playing with someone who's not that way, if you're playing with an aggressive player, then either you're going to lose badly, very badly, or you have to go aggressive. And so sometimes we're forced into that position. And of course, what's challenging, I think, for us is to maintain our humanity and play whatever game we have to play to be successful.